In the 80s and 90s, a big part of your video game experience was rental stores. Whether it was Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, or just your local mom and pop shop, rental stores let you try the latest games for just a couple of bucks. And sometimes you'd find games that weren't even available at retail. That's right, it's time to talk about rental exclusive games. Welcome back to Complete Inbox, the series that looks at classic games alongside the box, manual, and all the other stuff they originally came with. Today, we're looking at a category of games that are particularly difficult to find in complete condition: rental exclusives. The relationship between the video game industry and the movie rental business didn't exactly start off on the right foot. In fact, Nintendo wanted to make it illegal to rent video games. When that didn't work out, it became more of a if you can't beat 'em, join 'em type of situation. Game publishers looked at rental stores and asked, how can we turn these to our advantage? One answer was putting games into rental stores exclusively. The rental store could boast of their exclusive game, and the publisher would be guaranteed to sell all the copies it made. This minimized risk in cases where the publisher wasn't sure if the game would be a success at retail. One of the first rental exclusive games was a special version of Capcom's classic beat-em-up for the Super Nintendo. The original arcade version of Final Fight had three characters: Street Tough Cody, Mayor Mike Hagar, and Guy, a ninja dressed in highly visible safety cone orange. When it was first released on the SNES in 1991, Final Fight only had Cody and Hagar as playable characters due to memory constraints on the SNES cartridge, leaving their dear friend Guy to fight another day. But in 1992, Capcom released Final Fight Guy in Japan, which swapped out Cody and dropped in Guy. 2 years later, Capcom brought this version to the US as an exclusive in Blockbuster video stores. The packaging for Final Fight Guy is wild. Unlike literally every other American Super NES game, which came in black boxes, Final Fight Guy's is bright orange, just like the Japanese box. In fact, they took all the text from the Japanese box and put it untranslated onto the cover. The little badge on the front cover that says Blockbuster exclusive also says direct from Japan, which that's no different than any of Capcom's other games, but okay. On the back, same thing, all Japanese. Something really funny about this though, this address here on the bottom is actually Capcom's Sunnyvale, California US office, but it's written in Japanese. Like, somebody was clearly having some fun when they made this. Fortunately, the manual and the game itself are actually localized into English, and the game has all the censorship and the changes that were made to the US version of the original Final Fight, so it wasn't quite direct from Japan after all. Another rental store exclusive was a similar twist on a previously released game. John Madden Football Championship Edition for the Sega Genesis was identical to the standard release John Madden 93, with a twist. The teams were all based on historically great teams in NFL history, often Super Bowl winners. So if you wanted to pit Joe Namath in the 1968 New York Jets against Joe Montana in the 1984 San Francisco 49ers, you could do that. It was on the Nintendo 64 that the idea of rental exclusives really took hold. Why? Well, it was pretty expensive to make Nintendo 64 cartridges, so it's possible that publishers were becoming more risk-averse. Also, rental stores could serve as a test market. If the games became popular, they could do a wider release later. The Nintendo 64 version of LucasArts' Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine was mostly a Blockbuster exclusive. When it was released in December 2000, you could rent it at Blockbuster stores or buy a copy at LucasArts' website. For that reason, the box doesn't say Blockbuster exclusive anywhere on it. Finally, here's the craziest rental exclusive of them all. Everybody remembers the US release date of the Sega Dreamcast, right? September 9, 1999, or 9/9/99. Well, you could actually play the Dreamcast much earlier than that, starting on July 15th, because for a while, the Dreamcast itself was a rental exclusive, available on Hollywood video stores around the country. For $20, you could rent the console for 2 days, and it included a copy of the hotly anticipated Sonic Adventure. But here's the thing, Sega hadn't finished developing Sonic Adventure yet. It was making numerous changes to the US version of the game, and these weren't done. So what you could rent on July 15 was called Sonic Adventure Limited Edition. It's sort of a halfway point between the Japanese version and the final US version. For example, while the text and voices are in English, the character's lip-syncing animation is still timed to the Japanese lines, making everything out of sync.
Yep, I just happened to find one of the Southern Emeralds during one of my test flights. This thing's got unlimited power, you know.
Some stages are laid out slightly differently, and all the internet functionality is disabled. Renting out the Dreamcast 2 months before it launched was ambitious, and also kind of a stupid idea, which Sega seemed to have no shortage of in those days. Why take your biggest launch game, which you can beat in like 10 hours, and let people rent it and the console for 2 days for 20 bucks? I don't know. One thing that all these games have in common is that they're pretty difficult to find today, especially in these conditions. You could eventually buy all of these games once the rental stores decided to sell them off a few years later. At that point, the box or manual might have taken a lot of damage if they were even still there. But if you were lucky enough to wander into a Blockbuster at the right time, maybe you got one of these for your collection. And just as long as some kid didn't forget to return the manual to the rental store, well, then you had it complete in box.